Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr.
Key Allen's present. Second.
Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr. answered. Roll call. Honorable Paul Begay.
Delegate Paul McGee is present.
Honorable Paul Begay answered. Roll call. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown is present.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown answered. Roll call. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton.
Delegate Charles Newton is present.
Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton answered. Roll call. Honorable Amber Canespa Crotty. Honorable Amber Canespa Crotty is present via text. Honorable Speaker Seth Thaman is present. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr.
Present.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. answered. Roll call. Honorable Mark Freeland.
Good morning or good afternoon, Freeland's present. Thank you.
Honorable Mark Freeland answered. Roll call. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Pernell Halona is present. Honorable Jamie Hino.
Delegate Hino is present. Good afternoon.
Honorable Jamie Hino answered. Roll call. Honorable Vince James.
Delegate James present.
Honorable Vince James answered. Roll call. Honorable Rick Nez.
Delegate Rick Nez is present. Yeah, okay.
Honorable Rick Nez answered. Roll call. Honorable Carl Slater. Honorable Carl Slater. Honorable Carl Slater did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.
Present.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. answered. Roll call. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr.
Present.
Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. answered. Roll call. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Daniel So. Honorable Daniel So. Honorable Daniel So did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr.
I'm present.
Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. answered. Roll call. Honorable Edison Winika. Honorable Edison Winika. Honorable Edison Winika is present. Honorable Edmund Yazi.
Yeah.
Honorable Edmund Yazi answered. Roll call. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair did not answer. Roll call. Going back up. Honorable Almer Begay. Honorable Almer Begay. Honorable Almer Begay did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Carl Slater. Honorable Carl Slater. Honorable Carl Slater did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Daniel So.
I'm here.
Honorable Daniel So answered. Roll call. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair did not answer. Roll call. Speaker, we have 18 members present, including yourself.
Speaker, this is Delegate Otto So. I am present. Got me in for attendance. Thank you.
Honorable Otto So answered. Roll call. 19 members present.
Thank you very much. With that,
Speaker,
colleagues,
this is Delegate Slater. I'm present.
we have 20 members present with Honorable Ottoso and Honorable Slater as well. That, colleagues, moving on down, we did have an invocation this morning at the Navajo Committee from Honorable Chairman Jamie Henio. So that we'll go ahead and welcome that as our prayer and invocation for the day. And thank you again, Chairman, for blessing the day and blessing these discussions and blessing the Navajo Nation as a whole. With that, colleagues, let's go ahead and continue on down to item number 2, recognizing guests and visiting officials to the Navajo Nation. Are there any recognitions at this time, colleagues? Went twice. Going 3 times. That, colleagues, let's go ahead and move on down to item number 3, review and adopt the agenda. Mr. Rico, if you could read the agenda into the record, and then we'll go ahead and call for a motion second.
Thank you, Speaker. Members of the 24th Navajo Nation Council, proposed agenda of the 24th Navajo Nation Council special session, Wednesday, August 24th, 2022. Navajo Nation Council chambers. Presiding speakers, name it, Navajo Nation Council. 1, call meeting to order, roll call invocation. 2, recognize guests and visiting officials to the Navajo Nation. 3, review and adopt the agenda. 4, reports, none. 5, old business, none. 6, new business A, legislation 0150-22. 7, close of session, announcements, adjournment. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. That, colleagues, is there a motion?
Henio, Vice Chair.
Motion by Chairman Henio. Second
Second, Vice Chair.
by Vice Chair Smith. That, colleagues, any comments, questions? Going twice. Going 3 times. Let's go to board. Voting on our agenda this afternoon.
Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay did not vote. Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Paul Begay.
Delegate Paul McGee votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown did not vote. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton.
Delegate Charles Newton votes green.
Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton votes green. Honorable Amber Canesba Crotty. Honorable Amber Canesba Crotty votes green via text. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. did not vote. Honorable
Green.
Mark Freeland. Honorable Mark Freeland.
I vote green.
Honorable Mark Freeland votes green. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Jamie Henio.
Henio votes green.
Honorable Jamie Henyo votes green. Honorable Vince James.
Delegate James votes green.
Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Rick Nez.
Delegate Rick Nez votes green.
Honorable Rick Nez votes green. Honorable Carl Slater. Honorable Carl Slater votes green
Green.
via text. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.
Green.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr.
Green.
Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. votes green. Honorable Otto So. Honorable
green.
Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So did not vote. Honorable Daniel So.
I vote green.
Honorable Daniel So votes green. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So did not vote. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr.
I vote green.
Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. votes green. Honorable Edison Winika votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie.
Green.
Honorable Edmund Yazzie votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair.
Delegate Yellowhair votes green.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Going back up, Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay did not vote. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown is present.
How do you vote, Mr. Brown?
Honorable Brown.
Delegate Brown is present.
We're voting.
Oh, okay, for the agenda, I vote green.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So did not vote. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So did not vote. Speaker, with a vote of 20 in favor, 0 opposed, and speaker not voting.
That, colleagues, 20 in favor, 0 opposed. Speaker not voting, motion carries. We do have an agenda before us. With that, let's go ahead and continue on down. Item number 4, reports, there are none. Item number 5, old business, there are none. Item number 6, new business. A, legislation 0150-22, sponsored by Chairman Henio. Mr. Rico, if you could read the legislation into the record, and then I'll go ahead and go to the floor for motion second.
Delegate Brown will motion.
Thank you, Speaker. Members of the 24th Nomination Council, tracking number 0150-22, an act relating to the Budget and Finance and Navajo Committees and the Nomination Council, accepting the audit report provided by KPMG LLP regarding the Navajo Nation's financial statements for fiscal year 2021. This legislation is sponsored by Honorable Chairman Jamie Henyo, co-sponsored by Honorable Vice Chair Otto So. You do have committee reports from the Budget and Finance Committee that recommend a due pass with no amendment, and also committee report from the Navajo Committee that recommend a pass and refer to the Navajo Nation Council. Per Navajo Nation Council Rules of Rule 9, legislation has been read into the record by electronic voice recording. This legislation is final authority here at Navajo Nation Council. Mr. Speaker.
That, colleagues, is there a motion? Motion by
Delegate
Honorable Alder.
Callahan.
Second,
Vice Chair Smith.
second by Vice Chair Smith. That, colleagues, we did have a NABI meeting. Does NABI work? Comments or questions? Going twice.
Speaker, this is Del.
On the board.
Speaker,
Yes.
Speaker, this is Delegate Charles Newton. I said I'd like to hear the presentation.
Thank you. With that, Chairman Hino.
Agustin, kailangan sila Speaker Damon Ados ng 24th Nomination Council. Dodi pinabihada si Adawa si data for the presentation. You should come as that was requested to hear the presentation. So therefore, I'll defer to Madam Controller Elizabeth Begay, and we do have KPMG representatives on the line, Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Bunnell. So even I will move forward to the presentation, as I don't want to take too much of their 20 minutes away. The Speaker Damon, Madam Controller Elizabeth Begay.
Yes, thank you, Chair Henio. Thank you for sponsoring this legislation and co-sponsor Delegate Otto. Good afternoon, Honorable Speaker and honorable members of the Navajo Nation Council. For the record, my name is Elizabeth Begay, Acting Controller, and we are here to present the financial statement audit results for the year ending September 30, 2021. And of course, here with us is Mr. John Kennedy and John Bunnell from the KPMG auditors. And also with me is Rob Willie, General Accounting Manager. So I'll transfer the floor to Mr. Kennedy. Thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you. And I'm going to jump right in, just time management, but I want to be on video for a moment. So hello to everybody. It's great to see you. And so with that, we're going to jump into the presentation, which is the same as what we went through this morning with the NABI committee. So just a couple highlights and maybe responses to questions from the earlier presentation. We are, and have already submitted the request to print up hard copies of the financial statements. And we're going to send those to the Office of the Controller next week. So any individuals that would like a hard copy of the financials, they will be available at the Office of the Controller's office next week. And we're also, in response to Mr. Delegate Kealan Begay's request, we are also working on the schedule for the Veterans Trust Fund financial information for the last 2 years. And so we did discuss that between meetings. And so that is also in process. Just a reminder that we have issued the financial statements, and they were issued on August 17th of 2022. So they're done, ready, and fully issued at this point. And so with that, I'm going to, I should say, we did conduct our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. And so with that, I'm going to go and skip to the next slide, which is the auditor's report. Thank you, John. So as we mentioned in the earlier presentation, the financial statements that we've audited and the opinions that we've issued here are in relation to the Navajo Nation government. They don't include the enterprises and they do not include the chapters. So that's, and the opinion that we have here is very consistent with opinions that have been issued in the past by us and prior auditors as well. And we did confirm, and I should say that opinion has been this way for many years, and other governments also issued this type of opinion. And in fact, there's a standard template for this type of opinion where you don't include your component units in your financial statements. So a couple things I did want to reemphasize and with an update. We did talk to Jeff Urbina at KeyBank just to reconfirm, he's your bond underwriter, that the opinion shouldn't have any impact on your bond rating as it hasn't in the past, and you've used this opinion for many years. We also did ask him in response to, I believe it was Delegate So's question about bond rating in general from these financial statements. And Jeff said, which I would say is, we're not bond rating agencies, we're not S&P, but based on just general understanding of the way that process works in your financial results for this year, September 30, 2021, we don't anticipate there would be any negative impacts to your bond rating. But once again, they will get reviewed by S&P as they always do. And if there are questions, S&P will raise those to you and and go forward. But just as a general note, we didn't see anything that just immediately concerned us at all regarding your financial statements. Going on to the financial statement analysis slides. And once again, so this is your general fund revenue. And so this is just the general fund. And as I mentioned this morning, we have really two sections here. There's a table that shows the 2021 results of your relative to your financial numbers, and this is revenues. And then 2020 is to the right of that. And at the far right is a column that shows the changes between years. Looking at your revenues, oil and gas revenues up because the spot price of oil is up. Mining revenue is down just because you're taking less tonnage out of the ground right now. And so it's just simply reduced that revenue source. Tax revenues was up primarily $10.3 million more of sales tax revenue. And then you also had fairly consistent land, buildings, and right-of-way revenue and other revenues. And other is primarily that insurance program with the pasture, range land, and forage program. Next slide, and just a reminder that your revenue sources are quite different than most other governments because you do get a significant portion of your general fund revenues is based on oil and gas, mining, other land revenues like right-of-way, and even settlements, which other governments typically don't have. So it just means it's just a little bit different for you in terms of how you evaluate and think about your model when you're budgeting and whatnot, and how you plan for the future. Next slide is the general fund expenditures. And so what we've done, we've done stacked bar charts here that show where you've spent your money for each of the last 5 years. And the total expenditures for each of those 5 years is across the top. It's been around 200 million, low 200 millions for most years. Last year was less because you did transfer some expenses to the grant fund, and the CARES Act covers those expenses. This year, those expenses reverted back to the general fund. But a couple things. For this year, your personal expenses, were about $100 million. That is relatively consistent with all years except for last year, so 2017, 18, and 19. So that represents about 40% of your total expenses. And the other item I wanted to mention, which I mentioned this morning, is that the tribal assistance number is up this year. And it's up primarily because you had a significant tribal grant this year to the gaming enterprise, $15 million to kind of get them going again, to reopen their doors and to cover operating expenses while they were not operating at full capacity. And that's the orange bars. But that gives some perspective on where the general fund expenditures have gone the last 5 years. This slide just shows that, when the bar is up, it means that you have revenues exceeding expenditures, and so you've managed within your means. And to the extent you had negative years where you have bars going down, it means that you expended more than you brought in revenue for those years. And by and large, those years have been fairly modest when you've had expenses exceeding revenues. And most years you've obviously had it the other way, which is more revenues than expenses, which is what you want. And relative to bond rating, over time, you really want to see more up bars than down bars. Fund balance. And so this shows once again within the general fund what you have in the way of essentially like equity, if you want to call it that, for a government, but it shows what your fund balance is in your general fund. And we've broken it out by the different kinds of fund balance here, 4 different types. And these are determined, really GASB sets the vernacular, but in terms of what they are, it depends on how the nation has set aside their funds. So the teal bar, you have some money set aside that is restricted, and it's restricted by third parties in terms of how you can spend it. So that's why those amounts end up in the teal bar. The orange bar is amounts that council is in some way appropriated to be spent for certain purposes, like the 5-year plan funds go in there that come from the Perm fund. And the bottom bar is really the light blue bar, is the unrestricted funds that the council can appropriate as they see fit in the future. Snapshot of the Sahasan Fund here, and just shows the blue bar, the big bar, maybe that's the most important bar, is how much money is in the Sahasan Fund right now. And you can see that it continues to go up over this 5-year trend, really because you've had very good results in the marketplace. And as you continue to generate income in the market in terms of your investment strategy, that income has exceeded your expenditures, which has led to the fact that the fund balance continues to grow, which is a great story. And it says you have long-term stability in that fund, and you're also able to use those monies, which you have, $50 million in the last year, to spend on various important projects to the council. grant fund. And so this shows, once again, historical results in the grant fund. Grant revenue numbers, which also is equal to grant expense numbers, is the dark blue bar. And you've historically spent about $300 million in grant funds pre-pandemic per year. The last couple of years, that number's gone up, and it really spiked this last year, and it will likely spike quite a bit more next year because the CARES Act funds. So the CARES Act expenditure activity is reflected in that dark blue bar in 2021 and will be reflected once again going forward. And the teal bar shows how much you have received in grant funds that you have as of yet not spent. And so as of September 30, 2021, you have $2.8 billion of cash on hand. Most of that's ARPA, 2.1 of that is ARPA money, but you've received the funds, haven't spent the funds yet. So this reflects that you've got them. It's unearned at this point because you haven't spent it. Once you spend it, it will become earned revenue, but it is available to be spent in the future. And it's obviously a good amount of money for you. This slide is on the Perm fund. It gives some perspective on how your investments have performed over the last 5 years. And every year has been an up year for you. So the market has been very good to you. And your investment strategy has been very effective in that each and every year in the last 5, your Perm fund has continued to grow as your investments have a great rate of return. And this year was a particularly good rate of return as you had $435 million of investment income on a fair value improvement this year on all your investments. So really a great story. And obviously that then allows you to provide funds back to the general fund and replenish some of your revenues there as maybe other revenue sources decline. This slide I did not get a chance to talk about this morning. It is a historical presentation of the Perm fund. And so historical, it shows that from 1986, when the Perm fund was initiated, there's a little red strip at the bottom there. You seeded the Perm fund with $26 million of cash. And then each year, you've continued to put 12% of your general fund revenues into this fund, which is that purple bar. So you can see it keeps going up. But the 2 bars above that, the blue bar and then the teal bar, those show the investment returns to this fund over the historical time period you invested. So historically, starting from $26 million back in 1986, you now have $3.5 billion that has come into this fund. So it really is a great story, once again, in terms of the way this fund is performed. And at the very top there, it shows you this little mustard line that you started withdrawing funds from the Perm fund somewhere about 5 or so years ago. And you've withdrawn about 11 million to 25 million per year. So cumulatively, you've withdrawn $110 million from the Perm fund to support the operations of the government and in accordance with the 5-year plan over the last, I think it is 5 years at this point, maybe 6. But in any event, this gives you some historical perspective on the Perm fund and what it's done over the life of the fund. And this year it had an increase of $527 million in fund balance. So once again, really a strong year. This slide represents transfers out of the Perm fund and expenses. Probably the main difference between 2020 and 2021. 2021 had about $40 million of transfers and expenses, and there's less than 25 last year. It's an increase this year of $14 million of transfers from the Perm fund to support the operations of the government and the general fund. So that's the main fluctuation, but it just gives you perspective that you're on average spending between $25 and $40 million a year out of the Perm fund, which right now is much less than what you're earning, at least for the last 5 years. So this is, we do like to share some of the footnotes with you and the important footnotes we think, and there's many other footnotes in the financials. These are a couple key ones. So as of September 30, 2021, you have $9.5 billion of cash and investments in your financial statements. So really a big number. But when you break it down, it really breaks down into 3 buckets. And the top bucket is unrestricted cash investments. So it means unrestricted. No third parties, or either by legislation or third parties, it's available to be spent. It's available to be appropriated. It's available to be utilized as council sees fit. And those are in various funds. But some of that's in the general fund, but some of it's in other funds. Then the next bucket down, which is the largest bucket, $6.5 billion of cash is restricted. And that really is mainly from 2 things. It's $3.2 billion, which is in the Perm fund. And so the investments in the Perm fund and the called corpus, if you will, is not available to be spent. You can just spend the earnings. And then $2.8 billion is in the grant fund because that money has come from the federal government and they have restricted how you can spend that money. So that's the middle bucket. And the bottom bucket is the pension fund. So you have about $1.2 billion of, it's really pension fund, deferred retirement fund, and benefit fund is really what makes up that fiduciary fund bucket. But the cumulative of all those is $9.5 billion of cash and investments as of 9/30 of 21. This slide, and I do want to make sure we spend a little time here as well. This is the note receivable slide for the Navajo Nation Gaming Enterprise. And so this shows, at least as of September 30 of 2021, how much the gaming enterprise owes you in a note, what they borrowed from you, if you will. They borrowed $198 million. The lending funds, if you will, are presented here. The Perm fund is about 69% of that number, so 136 million. But other funds have also loaned to the gaming enterprise: Chapter Nation, Government Nation Building Fund, Land Acquisition Fund, going on down, Scholarship Fund, Veterans Trust Fund, Sahasan. So all these funds at this point are owed monies from the gaming enterprise. We've kind of put a table in here to show you what the historical balance of that note is. And you can see in 2017, it was 211 million, almost 212 million. Each year it was paying down because the gaming enterprise was doing well. They were open fully and they were able to pay that note down. But once you hit September 30 of 2020, just due to the pandemic and the way the operations have played out, they're in forbearance right now. And I know you know that because you passed the forbearance agreement. But in any event, that loan has stayed flat for the last year. And they also have not paid interest for the last year or so. And so there's some words at the very bottom there. Last line, it just indicates that as of September 30 of 2021, the gaming enterprise, in addition to the $197 million, they also owe you $14.8 million of interest. So they haven't paid the interest either. So cumulatively, they owe you that amount of money. And then the pension fund, which I think is a great story, but your pension fund, once again, you promise benefits to your employees. This shows you what you promised them in benefits. And the top line in the table says that as of 2019, you owed them and you promised benefits approximately about $1 billion and $1.7 billion. Actually, it's $1.07 billion. It went up in 2020. As of 2021, it went up another 46 million. So it's basically $1.159 billion of promised benefits to your employees in retirement. But the great story is below that is the amount of investments you set aside to pay for those benefits. And historically, most governments have been in a net pension liability position, which means that promised benefits exceed assets. In this case, because the market has done very well for you the last 5 years, you've actually now flipped that, where you have investments in excess of the liability. I will say all the actuarial assumptions and everything else they put in place assumes that you have good years and you have bad years on the investments. And we know right now the market is down this year. So while it's a great story, obviously at the same time, you want to continue to be prudent and continue to fund the plan as the actuarial assumptions suggest you should, and just make sure you continue to fund it. But it's once again a great story. And if you look at the very bottom table, we've kind of compared your funding levels to other pension funds around the state, all 50 pension funds, state pension funds. And the least funded, if you will, on average is about 72% and less. And the best funded, 75th percentile, are 99.8% and above. And you're above 99.8% funded right now. So you're in the top quartile of funding for pension plans around the country compared to other states. And we think that's a valid comparison. Then just the last thing I did want to focus on, as I mentioned, is connection with our audit. We're auditing your financial numbers. We do find occasionally certain things that come to our attention. These are not operational matters, these are financial matters. We find maybe adjustments to the financials that need to be in some way addressed. And when we do find that, depending on the magnitude of those items, we report back to the council, to the committee, and with essentially what are our findings. And this is one of those, this is where we present that. So recognition of revenue is one of those areas. We have noted that 3 times we identified situations where you had under-recognized revenue this year for various reasons. And so we have identified those. The financial statements have been corrected for all of those understatements, except for the top one, which is more modest than the other ones. And based on that, we've identified that you need to review your policies and procedures and figure out how to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. We know that management is working on a solution for that, and we expect that we'll then audit that next year. The next item down relates to statutory allocations of revenues. And we did note that there was a miscalculation in the allocation of sales tax revenues. And so $13 million too much had been allocated to other funds from the general fund. We identified that, and management has moved that $13 million back to the general fund, which is where it should be based on your laws. And so that is another adjustment. And we recognize that management is working on a solution to address that going forward. And then the significant deficiency, which is less significant than a material weakness, but still important enough that we want to present it to you. We did identify some misclassifications in your financial records between cash and investments. In total, everything was right, but there's some guides in terms of whether something is considered a cash equivalent or something is considered an investment. And those numbers were slightly off. So once again, we know management's working on the solution to address that. And we'll audit that next year, as I mentioned. All of these and other items, we'll revisit this next year, make sure that they've in fact fixed the items that we identified. And I think with that, I will stop and stand for questions. But once again, thank you very much. It's great to be here. And I forgot to thank and properly thank the Office of the Controller and others at the Navajo Nation for all the help they've given us to successfully complete the audit on time and get this to you today. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With that, Chairman Henio, does that conclude your presentation? There's 6 seconds left.
To the Speaker Damon, that concludes our presentation.
Okay, that colleagues, on everybody in the queue. We're just here to have a
Delegate
presentation.
Daniel So.
Chairman Daniel So, floor is yours.
Speaker Damon, the members of the 24th Navajo Nation Council, Chinampai, Chair Jamie Henio, and all the folks on the call from the legislative branch, executive branch, and most likely the judiciary branch, and Navajo Nation public. My question, and let me preface my question with, in 2019, this council voted to basically support the closure of Navajo Generating Station. And there was the, I guess, unfounded prediction that there was going to be revenue losses of $40 million per year. In your view, Controller Begay and Mr. Kennedy, has that occurred? I will have follow-up questions, Speaker, but that would be the first round.
Okay, well, let me go to Chairman Henio, and then I'll go back to you. Chairman Henio?
For the question to Madam Controller. This is the game.
Yes, thank you, Chair Henio. Thank you, Speaker, and Chairman Daniel. Those questions regarding the impact of the closure of Navajo Generating Station. There was a $40 million added to the general fund operating budget in accordance with that council resolution that was passed, CAP 3021. So that helped in the Navajo Nation General Fund operating budget. And it happened starting in fiscal year 2021 and also this fiscal year 2022. And it also will be added to the fiscal year 2023 operating budget. That's the $40 million. In addition, that came from the permanent trust fund income. And with the FY 2023 budget, we identified actually $67 million available from the permanent trust fund income. And of course, 40 million of that automatically went to the general fund that is available for the operating budget. And another 27 million is now available for the 2023 unmet needs budget of the programs. And of course, for fiscal year 2024, we just had our investment committee meeting, and it's estimated that there will also be available money, guaranteed 40 million for fiscal year 2024. And based on the market condition, they may be additional excess permanent trust fund income as well for 2024, similar to what's happening now for the fiscal year 2023 budget. And if Mr. John Kennedy can add additional explanation on that, Mr. Kennedy, go ahead.
Sure, and I unfortunately I don't have I don't have the perspective from 2019 and 2020. I can say definitively that the mining revenue declined this year by $7 million, and there was not a payment this year from Peabody where there was one in the prior year. So I do think there has been a decline in revenue due to the closure of the mine, but 40 million probably, and I don't know what period that was over, but obviously we've not seen that kind of a drop. But there was a drop this year of $7 million in mining revenue.
That concludes our response to the question from Chairman Daniel. So, Chair Hinio.
Speaker Damon,
Thank you.
this concludes our response.
Okay.
Back to you,
Well, with that, let me go ahead and go back to Chairman Daniel So. Chairman Daniel So, you have 3 minutes and 41 seconds.
Yes, and thank you. The follow-up question is respective of the Navajo Nation Gaming Enterprise. And my concern is the previous councils had those trust funds that are very essential to helping the young people and the older people, as well as those that are impaired physically. And it just seems like the council has been real easy on the Navajo Nation Gaming Enterprise. The Scholarship Fund, Navajo Nation Gaming Enterprise owes $4.7 million to the Scholarship Fund. They owe $1.13 million to Handicap Services Fund. The Senior Citizens Service Fund, $975,000. Vocational Education Fund, $1.13 million. And the Veterans Trust Fund, $4.8 million. And it's unconscionable that the previous councils would allow for the gaming enterprise just to pay the interest fund. As I've stated before, Grandpa takes his saddle into the pawn shop. He pawns it for $200. Next month, he can't come up with the $200. He just pays the interest fund, and the saddle stays in pawn. So this continues, and to actually have the council reduce the interest funds that are to be repaid. And what that previous action basically makes it to where less students get scholarship, less of our handicapped citizens get help. Less of our citizens get hearing aid, dentures, and glasses, and less of our children get to go use the vocational education funds and the Veterans Trust Funds established for the veterans. There is less money available for services. And in that aspect, if the council hadn't allowed just the interest funds to be paid back, and then again, we hear they still haven't paid the 2021, within this audit report. Haven't paid.
Chairman Daniel, so that's time.
The interest fund. Oh boy. Colleagues, if somebody would donate some time to me. Thank you.
Colleagues, any other comments or questions at this time? There's no other comments or questions.
Delegate.
Hello?
Speaker, this is Doug.
Honorable Daniels, is that you?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Daniels, good afternoon. Floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Kudo, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, Kudo. Kudo, my brother, Chairman Henyo, thank you for the invocation this morning. Yeah, Kudo, even Nasiko Kudo. Asahni Kudo. Adonana Kudo. Kudo Kitlahan Meko, Narada, KPMG, and also controller. Kudo Narada based on our military. Here in Kitlahan Meko. So, Kudo, my favorite shake with all the times that you're kidding. It's a what occasion, so Mr. Speaker, I'm going to yield the rest of my time to Chairman Daniel Sokoto to check.
Thank you. That 4 minutes and 16 seconds. Chairman Daniel, so do you accept?
I accept.
Hey, floor is yours.
Yeah, my favorite Che, Herman Daniels. In that perspective that I presented, Mr. Kennedy, you say you, in your work with other entities, to do a reduction in the interest rate on a loan and to allow just interest rates to be repaid. Is that an out of the ordinary action and out of the ordinary allowance? Speaker, I'll wait for a response. Reserve the time. I know I can't reserve it, so I guess I keep going then. In that respect, Mr. Kennedy, we realized that you didn't, you weren't the auditor for a period of time, and you come back and your company was the auditors more than 2 years ago, I think it was, and now you're back. Do you see any major changes of how the government has been operating respective of the financial position of the Navajo Nation? And I guess the other part that really I still am concerned about, there is the appearance of an understatement of fixed assets. Number one, Sahasan funds and other funds have been used to build some of the buildings. The fixed assets, let's say for the power lines and the water lines, those probably aren't part of this particular financial statement because they would be with NTUA, but originally the Navajo Nation funded those projects. In your look at this fixed assets, should those investments appear within the council's fixed asset line item? Speaker, that would be the extent of the question. I know I can't reserve donated time, and I appreciate the Chair, Mr. Herman Daniels, to have helped me out. I share that. Back to you.
Thank you. That, turn the floor back over to Chairman Genio. And I think there was a question specifically to your agent, Mr. Kennedy. Chairman.
One of their meetings had requested that they took the whatever gave me the so I had asked back schedule of how much interest and principal hasn't into each of the trust funds. That hasn't happened yet. So we get that, but yeah, well, the Twin Force Council can have a better idea of what has actually been put back into the trust fund as in the form of debt from the Navigation Enterprise. So I like to request that again through your office, that can provide the information to the Twin Force Navigation Council. Although moving forward to the question directly asked to KPMG, I'll defer to Madam Controller, Liz Segay.
Yes, thank you, Chair Genio, Mr. Speaker, and Chairman Daniel. So on your question, the question was directed to KPMG, so I'll have Mr. John Kennedy respond to the question. Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, no, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Begay. So a couple of things. And I will say we have some historical numbers on the gaming enterprise that I think are a little soft, but probably since the inception of the note, they've paid around 90 million or so in interest income. I think that's right, but that could be a little bit off, but I did look at some numbers on that. And so that's just an estimate at this point. But relative to your specific question, which was, is it unusual to have forgiveness of a note like this? And I think the answer is yes, there is accounting guidance for it because it does happen. And it's accounting guidance that if it were to happen, we'd have to follow, but it is, I would say, generally not a common occurrence. So I think that would be my response to that specific question. And then I think you did ask me one other question as well, which was related to, hold on, pulling up the questions, to NQA and to the power lines. And so the way that, and this is an accounting ease answer, but the accounting guidance for this kind of an activity. So if a entity pays for, let's say, a power line and a water line, but then another entity is responsible for maintaining it and taking care of it after it's been built, the asset gets recorded on the entity that is maintaining it and taking care of it after it's built. So I think in this case, the power lines and the water lines, although you're right, the funding maybe for some of it initially comes through the Navajo Nation government, ultimately NQA is the responsible entity that takes care of it. And so that's why, from an accounting guidance standpoint, those assets get recorded on NQA's books and records. And I think those hopefully answer both the questions, but we certainly stand for additional questions if you have anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, on that. Just to add on the Navajo Nation gaming loan, they are currently on forbearance. The forbearance agreement that we entered into with the gaming enterprise will expire September 30, 2022. And we are working to restructure their loan. So that's the status on that gaming enterprise loan. And we are looking forward to the Navajo Nation Council support on the gaming loan and restructure the plan restructure of their loan. Thank you. That concludes our response. Chair Henio?
Actually, and I'm sorry, I really apologize. I forgot to answer one of the questions. Would it be okay if I put in one more response? I'm sorry. The other question that Delegate So asked was just about the financial results. And now that we have, we obviously we're away and we're not your auditor for a few years, and we are now returning. I would say, I guess, a couple things relative to the quality of the accounting records, and it's a little more of a historical perspective. But over the, let's say, if we went back 10 years, from 10 years to today, it is a much cleaner shop relative to the accounting records and the number of adjustments we have and the issues that we address. So I will say there's been significant improvement from 10 years to today, and even from 3 or 4 years ago, the books and records are really in, I'd say, given the complexity of the government, in quite good shape. So there has been improvement. I think the last few years have probably been about status quo, but once again, from where you were 10 years ago, it's been significant improvement in the books and records at the Navajo Nation government.
So that concludes our response. Chair Henio?
Yes, so Speaker Damon, Ashland, after the 24th Navigation Council. And that concludes our response. Question, I would defer back to you.
Thank you very much. Again, for just joining us. We're having a special Navajo Nation Council session on legislation 0150-22. We did have our Navajo committee meeting this morning on the legislation. And thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for going over some of those answers again in the presentation while you and Madam Controller. At this time, colleagues, I don't have anybody else in the queue. I have a motion and a second. Going twice. Going 3 times. Let's go to board. On legislation 0150-22. Any motion?
This is Delegate Yellowhair.
I'm yellow here. I called for the question already.
Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Elmer Begay did not vote. Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr.
That would be Key Allen. Thank you.
Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Paul Begay.
Green.
Honorable Paul Begay votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown votes green.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton did not vote. Honorable Amber Canespa Crotty.
Shadid, this is Delegate Amber Canespa Crotty. I'll vote green, thank you.
Honorable Amber Canespa Crotty votes green. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. did not vote.
I vote
Honorable
green.
Mark. Honorable Mark Freeland.
Green.
Honorable Mark Freeland votes green. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Holona votes green. Honorable Jamie Henio.
He votes green.
Honorable Jamie Henio votes green. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Vince James did not vote. Honorable Rick Nez.
Delegate Rick Nez votes green.
Honorable Rick Nez votes green. Honorable Carl Slater. Honorable Carl Slater votes green via text. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.
Green.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr.
Green.
Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. votes green. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So votes green via text. Honorable Daniel So.
I vote green. Thank you.
Honorable Daniel So votes green. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So did not vote. Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr.
Thomas Walker votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. votes green. Honorable Edison Winika votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Honorable Edmund Yazzie votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair.
Delegate Yellowhair votes green.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Going back up. Honorable Almer Begay. Honorable Almer Begay. Honorable Almer Begay did not vote. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton.
Green.
Honorable
Charles
Eugenia.
Newton votes green.
Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton votes green. Honorable Vince James.
Votes green.
Honorable Vince James votes green. Speaker, with a vote of 22 in favor, 0 opposed, and speaker not voting.
Thank you very much. With 22 in favor, 0 opposed, and speaker not voting, motion carries on legislation 0150-22. Again, as Mr. Rico indicated earlier, final authority is here on that legislation. Thank you, colleagues. We officially met the code on meeting the guidance, or meeting the recommendation of approving FY fiscal year 2021's audit. That, colleagues, moving on down, close the session announcements, adjournment. There's a motion adjourned by Chairman Daniel So at 2:11 p.m. Is there a second? Second by Honorable Eugene So.
Second the motion.
Colleagues, go to board.
Honorable Almer Begay. Honorable Almer Begay. Honorable Almer Begay did not vote. Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr.
Allen votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Paul Begay.
Delegate Paul Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown did not vote. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton.
I vote green.
Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton votes green. Honorable Amber Canespa Crotty. Honorable Amber Canespa Crotty. Honorable Amber Canespa Crotty did not vote. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr.
Green.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Mark Freeland.
Green.
Honorable Mark Freeland votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Jamie Henyo.
I vote green.
Honorable Jamie Henyo votes green. Honorable Vince James.
Delegate James votes green.
Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Rick Nez.
Delegate Rick Nez votes green.
Honorable Rick Nez votes green. Honorable Carl Slater. Honorable Carl Slater votes green via text. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.
Green.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr.
Green.
Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. votes green. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So did not vote. Honorable Daniel So.
I vote green.
Honorable Daniel So votes green. Honorable Eugene So.
Vote close. Go.
Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr.
Thomas Walker votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. votes green. Honorable Edison Wanika votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie.
Green.
Honorable Edmund Yazzie votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair.
Duncan Yellowhair votes green.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Going back up. Honorable Almar Begay. Honorable Almar Begay. Honorable Almar Begay did not vote. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown votes green.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Honorable Amber Canesba Crotty. Honorable Amber Canesba Crotty. Honorable Amber Canesba Crotty did not vote. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So did not vote. Speaker, with a vote of 20 in favor, 0 opposed, and speaker not voting.
Thank you very much for that, colleagues. Officially adjourned and on our Navajo Nation Council special session at 2:11 p.m. with a vote of 20 in favor, 0 opposed, and chair not, or speaker not voting in this case. That, colleagues, again, just as moving forward, tomorrow is Thursday, right? Of course, we were supposed to have our Navajo Nation Council and Allocations Committee meeting tomorrow, but that's not happening to the fact that there's not that many legislations on there. We're having our Navajo Nation Council budget, NABI budget session and NABI meeting next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, 30th and 31st, colleagues. And then be a budget finance, I do believe, is meeting on the 29th. So again, thank you everyone for being on the line. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Thank you, Madam Controller, for being here with us on the audit, and your team members, Mr. Kennedy, that put that audit together again. Thank you. Yeah, that, colleagues, have a good day and safe travels. I know that for the record, we have Madam Chair Charles Lewin here, Chairman Henio, Honorable Halona, Honorable Wanika, Honorable Paul McGay, and Honorable Otto So in the chambers here with us. So again, safe travels, everyone. Have a good day and have a good week.
Thank you, Speaker.
There is a fair this weekend. Again, there was a question about fairs. Those have been issued out. All the health, everything to do with health and everything to do with notification. So information was sent out. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. It's good to see you, Mr. Kennedy. We'll see you.
You too. Thank you, everybody.